Do you honor the punishment that you give your children? Or do you say, you go to your room, but then you do not follow through with it? And does your children have a self-image of you, meaning the opinion that they hold of you, where they know mom is a woman of her word, so I better make sure I am in my best behavior? My name is January Donovan. I'm the founder of the Women's School, where I train women with the mindset and skill set necessary to flourish in every arena of our life so we can become a better vessel towards truth, beauty, and goodness. So today we're going to break down Patrick Bet-David's and Bradley's conversation regarding honoring the punishment that we hold our children. So let's jump right in.
One time I'm at Nordstrom's. Me and Dylan are wrestling in the waiting room, and this lady's looking at us. And I'm looking at her. She's probably in her mid-60s. She said, well, I remember my 3 boys were like that. It goes by quick, you know, that famous line. I said, oh, really? What do you boys do today? One of them's a doctor, happily married. Second one is a lawyer. Third one is this. I said, all 3 are winners? They're all winners. What's the secret sauce? He says, I'll give you one. That's all you need. Whenever you threaten your kids.
I just want to point out that this conversation between a 6-year-old woman and a man was so deep in a very short amount of time. That is a skill. That's a skill that us ladies need to learn, because we have an opportunity in every conversation we have, in every room that we walk into, to go deep with people where we are engaging and nourishing conversation. Now, it doesn't mean we're always getting advice, but it does mean that we are getting into the most important things in life and not just say, hi, how are you? What's your job? What do you do? That has its place. However, going deep right away where the person doesn't feel, invaded, or that there's not this, kind of awkwardness, it requires both parties to have a mature capacity for conversation. So I want to just point that out, because I think it's an important awareness here that we can have for ourselves and say, how skilled am I from 0 to 10 in my capacity to engage in deep, meaningful conversation in an instant moment where I'm able to maximize that opportunity in that given moment to harvest wisdom, to learn from, other people, and to seek the opportunity of making that a meaningful encounter. And I think that's a skill that every woman should learn. Why? Because it's more fulfilling for us to go about our day where we are skilled in bringing meaning in every situation. So because at the end of the day, we lay down in our bed and we say, today felt so fulfilling because it wasn't wasted, I would say, mindless conversation. That's how we do with, social media. We're just kind of wasting, or we have small talk that doesn't really touch the heart. And that's a skill. It's not something that we are born or we know what to do, or, some women are just gifted and some are not. No, it's a skill that we have to learn, unlearn, and relearn over and over again. And the better we master these skills, the better we can harvest good in every particular moment and contribute value in that moment and become great conversationalists and communicate in ways that fulfill both parties. And I think that's a crisis in our culture today. People don't know how to have meaningful conversation. People don't know how to engage in a conversation that makes them become a better person. And I think it's because most of us women are under-trained in our capacity to go deep, do it briefly and do it intentionally, ask the right questions, do so in a way that engages our entire being, watch our tonality, our body language, our capacity to be open. These are compounding skills that we teach in the Women's School. And unfortunately, we are expected to know how to do this when we've never been trained how. And so I'm pointing that out because we want to also create a generational training for our children that they know how to do this, because ultimately, meaningful conversations lead to meaningful quality relationships, and quality relationships lead to quality of life. That's what it means to be fulfilled, that we are living a life where we feel as though there's purpose, there's meaning, there's depth, and every encounter or every moment feels rich in meaning. And I think that we have to kind of turn this conversation around and ask ourselves, 0 to 10, how skilled am I in bringing forth meaning in every conversation, every opportunity, and not waste that, so that I can live my life in a more fulfilling way every single moment and bring forth good and not waste an opportunity to harvest wisdom in that moment. So, all right, let's continue.
What a freaking advice. If you don't do this, I'm going to take away your iPad. You better take the iPad away. Because if you don't, you're teaching them low standards.
If you don't, you're teaching them low standards. So the advice, I was kind of talking over it, so I apologize. But that basically saying, if you're going to say, I'm going to take the iPad away, then you better take the iPad away. And the standard is that when mom says, I'm going to do something, I am going to do it. Now we're looking at each other and saying, okay, do I do that all the time? Well, you can rate yourself. I can rate myself 0 to 10. Do I honor my word? Do I honor the punishment that I say I'm going to do with my kids, 0 to 10? And we can have an honest assessment. And it's something that we can look with deep humility and say, you know what, I really need to improve with that. And, I wasn't aware that the magnitude, the consequence of not doing this, and I can make it better and I can improve it. We can always start over. That's why we call it the new woman. In the women's school, we have a master class that's a foundational training of mindset and skill-based training, and it's called New Woman Masterclass. Why? Because every day we should choose to become a new version of ourselves that ascends to our highest self. And so instead of sort of self-pity and being like, oh my gosh, I'm such a 2, I'm so horrible, I'm such a bad mom, and walking to that guilt and shame conversation, ask yourself, who taught you the skill of consistency? Because before you can build that habit, you first need to know how to actually do it well. Skill is the ability to do something well, and we have to know how to do that well. Otherwise, how do we build a habit we don't even know how to do? And the presumption is that we're supposed to just build this habit when we don't know how. And so the skill of being able to honor our word is so critical, and to know that every single day we can renew the woman that we want to become.
The rest of their lives, they're going to replicate that with their kids.
What if a wife isn't on the same?
Okay, the rest of their day, they're going to replicate that. Because how does our children learn, or where do they learn how to become also a man or a woman of their word? By our model. It's not what we tell them. We say, well, you better be honest, or you better make sure that you're going to do what you say you're going to do and not be flaky, right? Have you met women that are flaky? Well, why? Because they were not trained. When I say trained, conditioned to honor their word, and maybe the training that didn't come from their mom, it wasn't modeled. And so what happens is that I'm giving you kind of a ripple impact. It's not a big deal. You say you were going to take the iPad, but you didn't. You forgot about it. And then it happens again every single week. Now your child thinks, well, sometimes there's consequence and sometimes they're not. If I can get away with it, I get away with it. What does that teach them when they're in the workplace? What does that teach them in their marriages someday? What does that teach them when they're in leadership or whatever it is that they're called to do? It tells them that, well, I don't need to be consistent if I don't get caught. And also, being a woman of your word is really not important. And follow through, optional. Chances are they're going to get fired. They're going to have poor relationship, and they're going to miss opportunities of leadership, and they're going to wonder why, what's wrong with me? Because in their mind, they think that's the norm, because we've made that a norm based on how we have communicated. It's really wired in their subconscious conditioning. So the ripple impact is that they are at risk of living an unfulfilled life when they too cannot honor their word. So we have to think about this in the grand sort of scope of life, of ripple consequence that can actually become generational. Because think about it, they're unfulfilled because they can't honor their word. They get fired on their job. They think something's wrong with them. Now they start to blame other people because something is wrong, because of their poor performance. And then they start to maybe get into substance abuse. And then they start to go down the spiral of an immoral behavior simply because they lack the skill of following through with their word. And it went down the spiral, it went in a spiral simply because of a skill that they were never trained, or they never learned from us. And so what I'm trying to part here is that there's a massive consequence for us not honoring the punishment with our children. So I think that's important. And then I'm going to jump right here because I think I'll tell you a story about my own. So I have I always try to be careful because I want to be respectful of my children, and I ask for their permission if I need to talk to them about them specifically. But I have two girls, and they, one of their contribution, and that's what we call work at home, is I don't use the word chores as I really do contribution, because I want them to equate their contribution in our home leads them to develop the contribution in outside our home. So their daily contribution is that they dry the dishes in the morning, from the dishwasher and empty it, right? And so what I have set the standard is that I want to be able to have you dry the dishes without me reminding you. And I told them that it's important because you need to be proactive in what's necessary in your life, and you don't want to wait to be told in what to do, because that's going to rob you in life. So I have repeated that over and over again, and a broken record is a mustard seed. And so I've made it very clear to them that that is their first job. And sometimes, Mom, I've got to make my lunch. I'm like, well, you've got to manage your time a little bit better. If you have to prepare your lunch and you also have to do this, then you've got to come down earlier, or you've got to work more efficiently. And so that I want them to be able to manage their time a little bit better, because I am training them as well to be vigilant about managing and being better stewards of their time. And so they were, oh, Mom, I'm late. I said, well, I did notice that you weren't very focused. And when you came down and you were kind of wandering around instead of coming down ready to go, knowing exactly, step one, I empty the dishes. Step two, I, pack my lunch. And step three, I gather all my things. And so I was observing their behavior. I was observing how they did things, so I can teach them some of the things that are needed. And so anyways, back to my story, that was their primary contribution every morning. And so what I've told them, I said, well, if I have to tell you that you have to empty the dishwasher, then you've robbed yourself of being proactive. And when we're not proactive, life is just going to fly by us because we're not looking for opportunities to actually serve. And so I said, when this happens, then we can't go out with your friends after school, because we've got to learn certain responsibilities at home in order to have those opportunities outside our home. And that was my consequence. And so I've kind of let it slide one time when I say, okay, remember, ladies, if you don't do it, I don't remember, there's consequence. And I didn't necessarily say the consequence, but I just said there's consequence. But then I was sort of noticing that they didn't honor that, because I was sort of not flaky about my consequence, but I wasn't clear about the consequence. And I just said, I really need you to do this because it's important. I was trying to avoid going that route. But anyway, so it was yesterday, actually. I said, ladies, I have to tell you that I'm now telling you to empty the dishwasher. And I've said it a few times, and I've noticed that you've kind of ignored it and not being really focused, because focus is a very important skill. When we're not focused, we're all over the place, and we're all over the place, we can't seem to get what it is that we're called or created to do. And then all of a sudden we feel restless. So focus is a very important thing that I believe is a skill within itself for their children. And so I said, unfortunately, the consequence, as I said, is that you can't go with your friends. And it kind of, my children have great friends. And so I love having them go out with their friends. They're coming after school because we live in this sort of small town. And so I was very clear, and I kept my word. And the next day, today, actually, I woke up, I said, oh, good morning, just kind of nice smile. And she said, Mom, dishes are done, And so is it going to happen again that she's going to forget? Yes. And do I have to honor my word again and say, oh, sorry, I love you, but I need you to learn how to honor your word. And that's typically what I always say to them. I love you, but I have to also help you become the best you. And so it works. It works to honor your word. Now, I have to ask myself, am I always consistent honoring my word? I'm sure I'm not always as consistent, although I really aspire to be. There's been times my older children have held me accountable and say, Mom, I've noticed that the littles don't put stuff away right away. That's a script that we have in our house, put stuff away right away. And I was like, yeah, I've got to really teach them. As a matter of fact, Pia came in today. I said, Mom, I noticed that the boys are not good at putting stuff away right away. I need you to really help them. And I told her, I said, can you make sure you help me help them, and that you train them just as I've trained you? And so I saw myself sort of like, okay, if I said that to Pia, that I have to hold my boys accountable, then I better make sure I honor that. So it requires us to be so intentional about with every word that comes out of our mouth, and making sure we follow through. And then also making sure that we're thinking about the ripple impact of the lack of consequence that we give our children. I would say natural consequence. And I think what we have to think about is that we have a self-image that we hold of ourselves, right? Self-image, as we define in the women's school, is the opinion that we hold of ourselves. So we have an opinion. Is my opinion of me a woman of her word? Is my opinion of me flaky about her word? Now, that opinion doesn't have to be, you're not stuck with that opinion. You can change that opinion that you hold of yourself. And I think that if you feel as though, you know what, I realize I'm actually not good at honoring my word, and it's causing sort of ripple impact consequences to my children, then I can change that. You can change it. You can take ownership and responsibility in the woman that you are designing to be, that highest and excellent version of you. is something that you can continue to do for the rest of your life. It's not one and done. It's an ascension to our highest self over and over again. And that's why we call it the New Woman Masterclass, because we are called to be a new woman every single day. And I think that's the gift of it, is that there's a place for humility and responsibility on a daily basis. And that way we can learn from it. And I think lastly, Patrick Bet David here talks about, well, what if my husband, my wife and I are not on the same page? And I think, actually, I'm going to show you, because I think it's a really, his confidence is quite telling. Let's see here.
In page
Oh,
is that?
that's the problem, though. That's when you got to win the wife over and sell it to her.
That means that you have to win the wife over. Well, it could mean for our case, we have to win our husband over. And I'm telling you, I am constantly trying to sell Ryan on what I think, and he's constantly selling me in what he thinks is best. He's sold me a lot on health, how to, Ryan is so funny with his health. He loves learning health hacks. Like we now have clover every single day. My kids chew on clover, like clover, and he's selling me on this clover, and vice versa. I sell him sometimes on the ripple impact of certain things that maybe he doesn't see, and that's, I think, the beauty of, I would say, the asymmetry in our between the man and a woman, is that we can complement each other because we think differently because of our natural inclination. So I think that's really a beautiful way to even say, well, I've got to sell her on it. But here's what she says. I think
I'm setting the standards.
Are you willing to take it all the way if she said,
Screw you, Patrick.
first, I love his facial expression.
Oh, dude, that wouldn't happen.
Okay, so that says a lot of things. Oh, his facial expression when Brad says the really not so pretty word, he says, oh, that would never happen. Why? Because there's a level, I think, of almost mutual respect that maybe is present in the relationship. And I say maybe because I don't know the relationship, but there's a good chance that that's the case. And the reason why I say that is because I would never say that to Ryan, regardless of the opinion that we have opposing, like whatever, I don't care what you think, Ryan. Like it's not, why? Because there's a mutual respect. And so his reaction signals that there's a mutual respect that, okay, I don't have to agree with you, but I would never lower my standard and just say that to you because I respect your opinion, and that we can come to some, conclusion of what is right, but never to a point where I ignore what I think is good, is one thing that you really see as good. And I think that's part of a great marriage and relationship, is that there is that respect, that the language that we use and how we communicate is not this blank you, I don't care what you say. And I think there is sometimes that attitude of entitlement that we think we are entitled to in marriage, which ruins marriage. Because at the end of the day, this is the person you have to live with. And you can't expect the other person to always be in alignment and agreement with you, no matter how close you are. And we are coming from two different family of origins, different experiences, and different lenses. And so it's inevitable. It's not that we are to live with this person that always agrees with us. It's that we know how to live and be respectful and honor each other amidst our disagreements. And that in itself is I think it's multiple skills all packed into one. But I think that's a beautiful testimony. So in conclusion here, learning to honor our word has ripple impacts in our children's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health. And when I say spiritual health, if they can't honor their word, how can they truly live a moral life? Secondly, they are looking at us to become that role model of somebody who honors her word. And number three, we have to be vigilant in developing the mindset and skill set necessary to be equipped to raise responsible children that are going to be contributors of truth, beauty, and goodness in the world. And the only way we do that is that we are constantly becoming a student of ourselves and also becoming a student of our children. We need to know how to reach them. Motherhood requires us to be students. I mean, think about the narrative of motherhood today is that it's hard, it's difficult, I can't deal with it. It's this hot mess mama mentality as opposed to being a student of our children, of ourselves, of the world, and that mothers should study every single day, just as we need prayer, we need physical nourishment, we need mental nourishment, we need the formation of the human person where we're chiseling our soul to become a woman of excellence. And that ultimately is what's going to fulfill us as a woman. But more importantly, it's going to be the catalyst in which our children can also live fulfilling lives. Because if they are void of a life of excellence and they negate their duty, and because they lack the skill training necessary to live, to be consistent, to do what is noble and what is right, they're going to suffer unnecessarily. More importantly, they will be burdened with unmet potential that is ordained to be part of their purpose simply because they lack the training they need. And that training has to begin with us. And to me, the revolution and the new movement that I hope that we can create in the women's school is that women are studying themselves, studying together, and studying each other so that we can become a true vessel for truth, beauty, and goodness. And that we can't try to solve the world's problem unless we have engaged in our own interior life. It's not just about having freedom, it's about having interior freedom, the freedom to choose our highest good. And that is what we teach in the women's school. If this training resonates with you and you want to learn more about what we offer in the women's school, click on the link below and subscribe to our trainings, and also join our New Woman Masterclass. It's a signature course that has been used with thousands and thousands of women across 40 plus countries through a group study model. And it is the most foundational training that you will ever have that encompasses the whole woman. Because most out there is like, how do you be physically healthy? And then how do you have a great marriage? And then maybe, how do you build wealth? What we offer is a foundational integrated training of the woman, because I truly believe that unless we see ourselves as an integrated version of a woman, we're always going to fall short of fulfillment, because every part of us impacts every part of us. And that is what we offer in the women's school. So join us and join the movement of women studying together and studying together so that we can become a vessel towards truth, beauty, and goodness.